If you've been watching the Gilbert real estate market, this video is for you. Whether you're thinking about buying a house in Gilbert, selling a house in Gilbert, relocating to Gilbert, or moving to Gilbert, Arizona, I'm sure you want a market update in Gilbert and want to know the raw numbers. This video has no hype, no fear talk, just pulling the raw data and discussing the figures, what's going on right now, and comparing it in past markets. I'm Dawn Forkenbrock with Real Broker, and I service the entire East Valley in Phoenix, and I appreciate you watching today's market update in Gilbert. So let's start with supply. Active listings right now in Gilbert as of today sit at 712 listings. So that's pretty much flat from last month. We were at 731 last month, but here's the number that tells the real story. 2 years ago, we had over 500 active listings. So there are a lot more options right now. Inventory has grown quite a bit since 2 years ago. And what that means is that buyers have more choices. When buyers have more choices, homes typically take longer to sell, and sellers often have to negotiate more, like lowering their list price or helping buyers with closing costs, which we are seeing. Now let's talk about pending listings. These are homes that are on the market, have accepted an offer, and are moving towards closing. As of today, that number is 155 listings, and that's down from last month where we sat at 179 pending listings. And it's down quite a bit from last quarter. Last quarter, we were at about 205 pending listings. Last year, we were at 167 listings. So while active inventory is holding steady, fewer buyers are actually getting into contract right now compared to recent months this year. So that is a number that is worth watching. Average sales per month this year so far in Gilbert is about 273 homes per month, and that is up from last year, which was 261. So that's a healthy sign that demand is slowly raising. You may see or hear news articles about demand going down in the Phoenix area, and we have to remember that those figures are so broad. Phoenix is so big. The data that we get for the city of Phoenix, is going to vary quite different than the town of Gilbert. So if we really want to understand the data, we do have to break it down to be either town or city specific, and sometimes even neighborhood specific. Days on market tells us how quickly these sales are happening and how quickly homes are moving. Average days on market right now in Gilbert is 68 days. This is relatively low if we're talking about other cities in the same area. For example, Queen Creek is closer to 90 days. So 68 days on average to sell a home in Gilbert is pretty good for this market. It's important if you are selling your home in Gilbert that you do have realistic expectations when it comes to the activity. When you first go on the market, you can expect just a couple of showings, and then after that, it's very normal to see one, maybe two showings. Some weeks you might receive no showings at all. It doesn't mean your agent isn't doing anything or the market is crashing. It's just completely normal for the market. We slowed down quite a bit last month, and I believe it's due to the hot summer month. It has been so hot and humid. School wasn't yet back in session, so a lot of people were traveling, and multiple times interest rates started creeping up again. So I think with the combination of those three things, it did slow down the market. Once school went back in session towards the end of July, I did notice things start picking up. Now, we don't actually see the data for what was happening until about 30 to 60 days later. So all I can tell you is what I was seeing currently and what I'm seeing now. All the data that we have, all the raw numbers are from it's usually about 30 days ago. So that is something to keep in mind. I like to also look at months of supply when it comes to gauging how the real estate market is. And what that indicates is if no other homes hit the market, how long would it take for all the homes to sell based on current activity and current buyer demand? So right now, Gilbert sits at 2.6 months of inventory. Now, anything over 4 months of inventory is considered a buyer's market. 3 months is going to be balanced, and anything below that is technically a seller's market. But don't get your hopes up, sellers. This is not 2020. You can't put your home on the market and expect 29 showings and 52 offers because half of them never saw the house. That's not what that means. I would call it a weak seller's market. They're still selling, it's taking longer, but in my experience, Gilbert is a place a lot of people want to move to. So the days on market tend to be shorter than some of the other nearby cities, and you can often see less months of inventory than you would say in Queen Creek. I'm going to rattle off some numbers for you, so take some notes or just zoom past this section if the numbers bombard your head. Price per square foot is something a lot of people like to talk about. I don't love it because price per square foot, it's just an average or the median of what's going on in the market, but it doesn't take into account whether a home has a pool or what kind of countertops or flooring or upgrades that a home has. It's just kind of gives you an idea of what's happening, but never take that literally, like their neighbor sold for X per square foot, so I must be able to get that, because that's not necessarily the case. But I do like to kind of look at it to get an idea of what's happening in the market. So I'm going to share some stats with you right now. Active listings in Gilbert right now are priced at $323.01 per square foot, which is about the same for the last few years. Last month it was $324, a year ago it was $316, and 2 years ago it was $318. Now this is the part you want to listen to. The homes that closed over the past the homes that closed over the past few months, average price per square foot is $289. What that tells me, just right off the bat, is that sellers are overpricing their home. And if we, again, compare last month to a year ago, 2 years ago, this is closed price per square foot in Gilbert. Last month was $289. Last quarter was $287. A year ago was $291, and 2 years ago was $288. So all those numbers are really close together. And so that tells us that Gilbert is pretty stable, and it has been for the past 2 years. We're not seeing dramatic up and downs, but because that active price per square foot is so much higher, that tells us sellers are overpricing. Which brings me to my next section, listing success rate. This tells us what percentage of listings are actually selling. Any guesses? Right now, we're looking at 73%. I don't think that's very good. 73% of the time a home gets listed for sale, it's actually selling. I can almost guarantee you it's going to be price. Everything comes down to price, right? Even if a home has a horrible pet odor or the walls are bright yellow or something like that, there's always a price that would make a buyer want to buy it. Because if the house costs $25, someone's gonna wanna buy that, right? So it always comes down to price. And I just thought that was so interesting, 73%. Last quarter, we were at 82%. And 2 years ago, we were at 79%. So we're quite a bit lower when it comes to listing success rate. I almost forgot what I was talking about. Everyone wants to know about price in Gilbert, Arizona. The average annual sales price right now is $693,275, which is really, really close to last month. That was at $694. It's up from last quarter, $286, and a bit lower than we were a year ago, which was $703,000. And 2 years ago, it was actually $697, which kind of surprises me. But again, we're pretty close together, and you know, the numbers don't lie. They're telling the same story, whether we're talking about price or days on market. Gilbert has stayed relatively stable. I also like to talk about median sales price. I've talked about this before. Average just takes just that, the average of every single sale. And the reason I don't love annual is because you could have a home that had major issues and sold for well below market value. And then you could have a $20 million estate that happened to sell that month. those two numbers are going to completely skew the average, especially when it's so far out of the norm, like the 20 million. For that reason, I like median. And to remind you from elementary school, when we learned about median, that's where you line up all the prices that they sold for. And instead of taking an average, you're taking the bottom number and the top number, and you just keep going until you get to that middle number. And that's why I like that better, just because you don't have those really huge sales messing up the average price. Right now, the annual median sales price is $590,000, and that number has been pretty steady. It matched exactly last month and last quarter, and it's just barely down from a year ago. A year ago, it was $599, and 2 years ago, it was $599.5. So again, I think that number makes more sense when you're talking about average sales price, even though it's not technically average, but it does kind of give you an idea of what homes are going for in Gilbert. If you have any questions about the Gilbert real estate market, or you're thinking about buying or selling a home in Gilbert or relocating to Gilbert, reach out to me. I'm happy to set up a mini consultation. I can send you my Gilbert buyer guide. I have a lot of resources available. You can find all my contact information in the description. Connect with me on Instagram. And one last thought I wanted to tell everybody about this market, because it is so weird right now. You never know what to expect. What I gave you is kind of the overview of what I'm seeing. However, sometimes a house goes on the market that you think, oh, this will definitely sell in the 68 days it's usually taking homes, and nobody comes to see it. Or you get an offer the first week, and then you start questioning what happened? What did we do wrong? It's the market, you guys. It's so weird. And then on the flip side, you could be a buyer and go look at a house in Gilbert that's been on the market for 6 months. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make an offer. I'm going to ask the seller to cover my closing costs. There's no way they're not going to agree to that. It's been on the market for 6 months. And then that weekend you put in the offer, 2 other buyers put in the offer too. And now they have 3 offers. And you're like, what is happening? It's just such a strange market. It's very strange. There is no normal in this market. But definitely when you work with a realtor, make sure they have some experience of what's going on so they can tell you these things, so you'll know exactly what to expect. If you like this video, make sure you like and comment and subscribe, because I will be dropping market updates every month, and I also do a ton of home tours every single week. I have new home tours, and I'll also show you some cool things that I like around Gilbert and the East Valley. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.